All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest here today. Fuba, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Ghost. How you been?
Oh man, it's been rough here in Epic One, but it's a lot of fun, man, and everything is going great.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. I'll be joining you in a couple months at Epic One, but right now I'm still collecting tickets.
That.
So why are we here today? You want to tell the audience?
So we are talking about officers and officers that have been, you know, just I don't know, misunderstood, right? So a lot
Yeah.
of a lot of officers has been left out and not talked about because they just not people don't understand them that well. So we're gonna talk about them today. Um, what officer do you think the people you know misunderstand the most?
I think it would be Tip of Spear.
Yeah.
Tip of yes, Tip of Spear. He is a versatile support officer that is more geared as being the lead officer, and his ability is a little bit confusing.
All right.
And the reason why it's confusing is because not only does he buff damage for your troop, and he also provides a firepower buff on his tactical skill for allies within 2 grids,
That is great.
and that is a pretty significant deal. And I think a lot of people misproperly use him because he is actually more not geared for field, unless you're using his awakened skill. He's actually more so geared towards base defense. And the reason why is because base defense, your troops that are on garrison actually activate their tactical skills. So he is actually providing a buff to all troops within the base.
That is insane, man. So that means if you are defending your base or he is an officer, he's buffing everybody in the base, all the units in the base, and that with a 50%, that is insane for 4 seconds. That is so it's 50% for 4 seconds, increasing their firepower, and then
Hmm.
that is a big like if you think about it, 50% buff for 4 seconds can do a lot in a base to base or defending your base, scenario. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
definitely
it could definitely become an instant nuke. Especially with his prep time skill, where I would actually personally recommend him with Fox to get hurt, to keep that base durability up all the time.
yes.
Because between him, Vox, Golden Eagle, and also obviously Steel Fighter and Thorn Countess, those are your primary base defense officers.
Now that
Before Tip of Spear, it was go ahead.
so if you have Fox, right? If you have
Hmm.
Fox, it gives you a resist of 30% for 8 seconds, right? So if you have tip
Right.
of the spear on that and that increases by 50%, that means it becomes 45% for 8 seconds. Am I correct?
Not necessarily. No, no.
Okay.
See what will happen. What will happen there is he'll be buffing the damage of the troop they're with. He's
Okay.
on, but he'll be buffing all the other officer troops in the garrison by I believe. Well, hold on. I believe it is actually I believe 30 to 45% firepower.
Yes.
No, 7% firepower buff.
Yes.
But he'll but what the key point is that he's always going to have her tactical skill up.
Mm-hmm.
There's no downtime. It'll be always active no matter what.
So that's where the prep time comes in, the 1.5 seconds.
Yes. And
Awesome.
the here's the really unique kicker with that pairing is that Vox's it gives awakened skill. It gives a prep time for garrison officer skills by zero point 0.5 seconds. That means it reduces it from 8 seconds
Mm-hmm.
to 7.5 seconds. And that's a pretty big deal on a base defense. So that means he's keeping Vox's skill up while she's releasing all the other officer skills by zero point 0.5 seconds less.
Man, that
And
is
that's why that's so important.
yeah, that's very important, and I think also if you think about it in this way, you can have these officers on units that's not even trained but just garrisoned, right?
No, this one you have to have trained troops to make it work.
Oh, okay.
Because the reason why is because it won't register their tactical skills if
Mm-hmm.
there's no troops in the base.
Okay. So that is then definitely something the people need to, or our guys, our viewers must look out for is at least even if you don't have a strong, uh, or you're not using them on your main units, you still have to train your units that are filling the base. If you have these guys garrisoned in base to get that tactical skill off, to get all these buffs.
That is correct. And I would recommend it on like your filler unit that you know is not going to do a lot of damage. Like if you're stacking up infantry right
Mm-hmm.
now and you're trying to follow the infantry meta, and say you got a 6.5 infantryman, you could throw Tip of Spear on there if you have him awakened with Vox, and he will still work just as good as any other unit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's very critical.
No, that's good, man.
Another another officer I feel is highly misunderstood in the late game is she's actually pretty good in the early game is and the reason why I'm saying this is actually Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
Bloody Mary is another versatile officer that is meant to stun your opponent, like to prevent them from attacking you.
Mm-hmm.
And this, what her initial tactical skill does is she increases their prep time by 1 second. So from like 8 seconds it now becomes 9, and then their secondary officer skill becomes 10.5 seconds. And then also when she's awakened, she disorients the enemy, making them unable to target you for 1 second also. So I want you to imagine fighting an artillery unit with
Mm-hmm.
either a light tank or any unit, and then you pop this skill off that, and where artery takes 4 seconds to fire, or even a preloaded Liberty howitzer takes 2 seconds to fire. This now stunts it to a 3 second or 5 second,
Yeah,
and also increases the prep time.
yeah, that is something that our viewers must also understand. If you delay a artillery and you catch up to it, or you close that gap with a light tank or MBT, right, or a helicopter, that 1 second makes is a big deal for artillery unit.
Yeah, because that's life or death for the artillery unit.
Yeah.
Because that load time, even especially a rocket launcher. Um, I'm gonna name drop someone here who was actually responsible for the rocket truck
Mm-hmm.
meta, and his name is Ochen. He was covered on Vanguard Warpath.
Mm-hmm.
He's the responsible for it. His actual favorite pairing on one of his rocket trucks is Antonina Shevchenko and Bloody Mary. And what he'll do is he'll use Bloody Mary's skill to stun other artillery units. So it was a very smart move for him. And I saw it in combat several times, and it's very effective.
Yeah, well, if you disable them for 1 second, that 1 second is, enough time. Let's put it this way: a rocket truck normally reloads 2 seconds, right? If you
Correct.
so if you disable a artillery, that means you can shoot twice before it's reloaded, and that's death.
Correct.
And we all know that officer skill is normally 2 shots before it goes off. So if a rocket truck hits you twice and its officer skill goes off by the time that you have reloaded, there's none of your artillery left. It's gone.
Yeah, it's already gone. It's deleted.
So I think that is something that we also must think about, because if you have someone like Antonina to get that extra grid, it also gives you good distance, and you have this prep time disable for the artillery you're facing. That means you can do a lot more damage, and get a lot more shots off to be able to disable or destroy artillery, and I think that is amazing.
Yes, it is. Now, the next officer that I feel is very heavily misunderstood
Hmm.
is Death Adder. Death Adder is one of the only two officers in the game where its fourth skill gives a 40% penetration boost of damage, and he's really, really good early game if you're using him on the correct unit.
Mm.
And a lot of people misunderstood him and just threw him on an ATG. But his tactical skill is the equivalent of Valkyrie. Now, Death Adder now, a lot of people are starting to finally understand him, and they would like to combo him with Valkyrie. They'll put him on a light tank, or they'll put him on a helicopter as the lead officer, and then Valkyrie as the secondary to manipulate her skill a little bit further. But a he's not hitting hard, but he what he does is that he is reducing the damage on a troop so that way you could kill it faster. I mean, the damage resist. He's reducing the damage resist of a troop that you're attacking, so that way you could kill it faster with a support of another unit. He's more of a support officer, and his skills are devastating on the field if used properly.
Yeah, I think that this is also officer. I don't even have him properly, because I don't have him, upgraded at all. Because nobody talks about him. Nobody, uses him that I've seen because everybody goes Valkyrie or Steel, Valkyrie and Fawn. On MBTs as well, a lot of the guys go Valkyrie and Bloody Mary for L tanks. Um, Even Winter Huntsman they use on L tanks. I see still just to hunting reserves and stuff. But what you if this is right, re- to decrease the damage resist on an enemy is huge, right?
Yes,
So
yes, especially with the damage resist but nerf and
yeah,
the damage nerf, because no one's allowed over 50%.
no, hundred
So
percent.
if this person was stacking damage resist, you're now reducing that by 20%.
Yeah, that is huge. And also, if you have good penetration, if you have a Vanguard MBT as well, and you have an officer like Valkyrie on there, and you have him in second, you can do a lot of damage to troops very quickly because if you take that resist off, that damage resist on maybe the office skill, like the officer skills that they already have on there, that can be a big problem for them because now 20% of your buff that you're getting from your officer that has that damage resist is now gone.
Correct.
So definitely, officer that I might have to look at because I need something like someone to pair with Valkyrie, and this might be a good officer to think about.
Correct. Now, to fully understand Death Adder, right?
Hmm.
It's his waking skill that makes him good. It's not necessarily the damage coefficient, it's what he brings to the table in pairing with Valkyrie. I definitely would recommend him as a lead officer, not as an aide.
Hmm.
Um, Now you obviously get that reduces the target's damage resist by 10% by 4 seconds, which stacks with Valkyrie's passive skill because her Sunder Armor skill is a passive skill, so
Hmm.
it stacks. But now, when he triggers, he is also giving your officer troop a 20% damage resist for 4 seconds and an increase in its speed for 5, which is a very big deal, especially on a helicopter
Yeah,
or
hundred
like you said,
percent.
a light tank or a MBT.
Yeah, 100%. No, that is a big deal. And
Now,
what other officer do you have that you're thinking of?
there is another officer who's Air Force who is highly misunderstood, and
Mm.
that would be Heaven Savior. He's like the least favorite fighter plane officer in the game, I feel. And the reason why he's so misunderstood is because he's a defensive officer.
Mm-hmm.
He's meant to tank the base, go up close to the base with your fighter plane, and sit there and take damage, like draw the aggro, so that way your friend's fighter planes or your secondary fighter plane comes in and does the damage. He's meant to soak the damage. He's meant to be a damage sponge.
So,
And because if you look at, go ahead.
so what you're saying to me is, he is one of the officers you use as a tank when you are flying over a base. When you want to bomb a base, you send him in first on a fighter, and then you bring in the bombers, so he can soak up all the damage.
Correct. Or say if now you're probably seeing this in Epic One. A lot of fighter planes will group together.
Mm-hmm.
Like they'll put all their fighter planes next to each other. So if someone leads with, say, three fighter planes lead in with Awakened Heaven Savior on their fighter plane, and they go in and they start the fight, he's gonna. Those fighter planes are there to draw the attention, while the other fighter planes come in to clear out the other fighter planes. So
So,
like you would use.
mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, no, you go ahead.
You
Go
would.
ahead.
I would use him in conjunction with Witcher
Yeah.
because of his abilities. Because I'm gonna explain it right now. If this officer is on a fighter plane troop, all enemy fighter planes within 5 map grids lose a 15% AA firepower debuff.
Mm-hmm.
Also increases the jam. It gives a jamming debuff, which is like meaning that if any bombers are in the area, and also affects fighter planes, it reduces their accuracy of hitting him. So that means especially he would be best served on a modern fighter plane because they're meant to be more to increase the dodge rate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I would use him.
So
They're
you
meant to be he's meant to be a distraction.
so you use his jamming capabilities and his debuff of firepower, and then you use Witcher's dodge capabilities to get more kills and take less damage. That is insane.
Yes.
That's amazing, man.
There yeah, he's not he's very underused nowadays because a lot of people like to do wars of attrition, so they want to use the officers that are doing the most damage. They want to do the most amount of damage as possible, kill a unit as quick as possible.
Mhm.
But this is a viable tactic because essentially you're keeping your primary fighter in the fight longer. So that way your secondary fighter, which it would be him that you sent in first, even though weaker, will
Mhm.
still last a somewhat longer than it would normally.
Yeah.
And now you can stay in the fight just a little bit longer and deal more damage with your primary fighter.
So, so that's amazing because I'm gonna build a Martis fighter, and a lot of people are saying no, don't do that. Get the Vanguard, get the Liberty, they're better. And then I said to the guys, you know what? It's the officers that you put on these fighter planes that make them great. Yes, maybe if you think about their base stats, right?
Right.
The Vanguard is better and the Liberty is better, but if you are just circling, they have said, and a lot of the guys from the top have said that the Martyrs fighter lasts longer in a fight, where it's just hovering.
You kind of we kind of somewhat lost sync there for a second. Hold on. I think I know what you were saying. Can you
Mm.
hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So let me explain a little bit. The
Mm-hmm.
Vanguard fighter plane, the Liberty fighter plane, and the Martyr fighter plane have three different roles on the battlefield. The Vanguard fighter plane is meant to intercept, so that means engaging combat, leaving combat. It's going to do the most damage going in and out of combat.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Liberty fighter plane has the most firepower, and it's like the jack of all trades. It has better dodge rate than the Vanguard, but it has lower intercept. Whereas the Martyr fighter plane has the highest dodge, but it has the lowest firepower, lowest intercept rate. So the Martyr fighter plane would be better at holding a position than a Vanguard or a Liberty fighter plane. Now, the Liberty fighter plane, it would be working well in conjunction with another Vanguard fighter plane.
Mm-hmm.
That's why a lot of people put a lot of hate on a modern fighter plane is because they're not using the fighter plane to its strength.
Yeah.
They're not using it properly.
Yeah, that's why I want to build it because I've seen a lot of fighting now in Epic One, and the planes are just hovering and staying at one spot. Especially when you're defending your safe zone, and it's definitely something that I was looking at, and I was like, I think I'm gonna make a Martis plane, and I'm gonna put the correct officers on that Martis plane, and you know use that one, to do the damage and protecting bases or artillery or rocket trucks.
Yes. There is another officer that actually comes up as a misunderstood officer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because she's a legacy officer. And this is like a little surprise, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be Percy. Percy is a perfect misunderstood officer. She was very popular in the beginning of the game with being paired with Death Adder on an ATG
Mm-hmm.
because she gave a garrison buff, she gave the firepower buff, she had some skill damage. She was not very good, but she gave some survivability. But what you can use her for, again, is like Tip of Spear.
Yeah.
You could double stack that firepower and get that firepower out way, way more than um Tip of Spear. She does 1% more firepower
Mm-hmm.
and she gives all troops within 2 map grids an extra 8%. So she's very useful in that aspect, and she still does 1200 damage coefficient. So it's pretty decent damage. It's not great damage, but it's very, very good. And she also gives a garrison troop damage buff
Mm-hmm.
along with a HP buff and also a blast damage resist.
Now that you're putting it that way, it sounds
Very
very,
versatile.
bro. It sounds very, very too good to be true, right? If you
Yeah.
put it that way. I've never actually went through her skills. I've always used her on one of my troop because of the garrison buff. Because as you know, as a free to play player, you don't last long, so you have to do what you can, you know, um, to play with these guys. So yeah, 25%, 50% damage, blast damage resist, 50%, and then the 8% for 8 seconds, bro. So if you have her on one troop and you have tip of the spear on another, you're getting a big
Mhm.
buff.
Yes, you are. Now, I'm going to tell a little story about how I set up my officer pairings. All right. He's in G27 now. His name is Peng Peng.
Mm-hmm.
All right. When I started out on S22, I was a complete noob. I've been playing the game since beta all the way up, and I was never really good at the game until I hit S22. And even when I was on S22, I was still learning the game, but Peng Peng was like kind of like my mentor. I
Yeah.
remember trying to kill his base, and he was utilizing Percy with Tip of Spear. This is before Vox. This is right after Air Force just came out, and I mean, it was a very devastating combo. And what he said to me, I'll never forget. People do not manipulate the game mechanics to their favor, and that goes especially for free to play players, but also whales. You need to look at the synergies of these officers and utilize them to have the maximum effect on the battlefield. Whether
Mm-hmm.
you're on defense, base to base, or whatnot, you need to look at the synergies. Once you have noticed synergies between two officers, then you gotta have a very potent pairing.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. I think that's definitely something we have to look at. But I want to say thank you, Fuba, for joining me, and your information is always welcomed in the community and also on my channel. Guys, if you want to go and check out Fuba, his link will be in the description. Thank you again, Fuba.
You're welcome, buddy.
And we will do this again, definitely. And guys, enjoy. See you in the next one. Fuba, I see you in the next one.
See you in the next one, bud.
Bye bye, guys. Cheers.
Peace.